Commander Vexthai stood on the bridge of his ship and looked at the blue planet below, Earth. That was what the creatures there called their home. He had seen many worlds like this one during his time with the Zephyrian hegemony. Most of them were easy targets. His second officer walked up to him with a data pad in her hands. "Sir, we have finished scanning the planet. The report is ready." Vexthai took the pad and read through the information. The planet had one dominant species called humans. They lived on the surface and had built cities all over the land. Their technology was simple and old. They used chemical rockets to reach space, but only barely. Their weapons were crude metal projectiles fired by explosive powder. Their ships moved on water using fossil fuels. "They don't even have energy shields," his second officer said. "Their most powerful weapons are nuclear bombs, but they are afraid to use them because the radiation hurts their own people." Vexthai nodded. This was normal for young species. They always destroyed themselves with their first weapons of mass destruction, or they learned to fear them. Either way, it made conquest easier. "What about their government?" he asked. "That is the interesting part, sir. They don't have one government. They have almost 200 different nations. Many of them fight each other regularly. Their military forces are divided between all these nations. Some nations are strong, some are weak. They spend more time fighting each other than working together." This was even better than Vexthai had hoped. A divided species was always easier to conquer. The hegemony had done this 847 times before. First, they would contact the strongest nations and offer them deals. Some leaders would accept money and power in exchange for helping the hegemony. Then they would turn the humans against each other while hegemony forces took control of important resources. "Send this report to the Hegemony Council," Vexthai said. "Tell them Earth is perfect for a training mission." 3 days later, Vexthai received his orders. The Council had decided to give this conquest to the Cathara, the newest species to join the hegemony. The insect-like Cathara needed practice with planetary invasion. Earth would be their first real test. "The Cathara Queen Commander is sending 50 ships," his communications officer reported. "They want to finish this in 1 month. Vexthai laughed. 1 month? That seems too long. These humans can barely reach their own moon. I bet the Cathara will have complete control in 1 week. The invasion fleet was small by hegemony standards. Most of the ships were old models that the hegemony didn't use for serious battles anymore. The crews were young Cathara who had never fought a real war. But that didn't matter. The humans had no space navy at all. They had a few small stations orbiting their planet, but nothing that could fight back. On the bridge of the main Cathara ship, Queen Commander Zixka studied the human planet. Her compound eyes could see in many different light spectrums, and Earth looked beautiful in all of them. Soon it would belong to the hegemony, and her people would prove they were worthy members of the galactic community. "Begin the standard surrender broadcast," she ordered. The message went out on all human communication channels. It was the same message the hegemony had used for hundreds of years. It explained that resistance was useless. It promised that humans who cooperated would be treated well. It warned that those who fought back would be destroyed. The hegemony expected the human leaders to respond within hours. Usually, primitive species needed time to discuss and argue, but they always saw reason in the end. Some would ask for better terms. Others would try to negotiate. A few would surrender immediately. But the human response was different. Instead of one message from a planetary government, hundreds of messages came back. Every human nation sent its own reply. Some were polite, some were angry, some were filled with words that the hegemony translation computers couldn't process properly. But they all said the same thing: no. The humans refused to surrender. Every single nation, even the smallest ones, said they would fight. Some nations that had been at war with each other for years suddenly announced they were working together. The human military forces that had been divided between different nations started combining into one army. "This is unusual," Zixka said to her tactical officer. "But it doesn't change anything. Begin landing operations." The Kythera ships moved into position around Earth. They would land troops in major cities, while their warships destroyed any human military forces that tried to fight back. It was a simple plan that had worked on every world the hegemony had ever conquered. As the first landing ships headed toward Earth's surface, Vexthai watched from his command vessel. He was curious to see how quickly human resistance would collapse. In his experience, most species gave up after they saw their military destroyed in the first day of fighting. He had no idea that everything was about to go wrong. The humans were not like other species the hegemony had conquered. They had been fighting wars among themselves for thousands of years. They knew things about combat that the hegemony had never encountered. And most importantly, they had something that no galactic species understood. They were stubborn beyond all reason. As the Kythera landing ships entered Earth's atmosphere, human air forces scrambled to meet them. The human jets were primitive, but there were thousands of them. They came from every nation on the planet. American F-22s flew alongside Russian MiGs. European Typhoons worked with Chinese J-20s. The human pilots knew they couldn't win against the alien ships. Their weapons weren't powerful enough, and their jets weren't fast enough. But they attacked anyway. Some human pilots rammed their jets directly into the alien ships when their missiles ran out. Others used their aircraft as decoys to protect ground forces. A few pilots ejected from damaged jets only to grab rocket launchers and keep fighting on foot. The Kythera had never seen anything like it. "Sir," the Kythera communications officer said to Zixka, "the humans are not following proper warfare protocols. They're supposed to retreat when they're clearly beaten." Zixka watched her screens with growing confusion. The humans were losing every battle, but they kept fighting. When one group was destroyed, another group took its place. When they ran out of advanced weapons, they used simple ones. When they ran out of simple weapons, they used tools and machines. "Perhaps they don't understand that they've lost," she said finally. But as the first day of invasion turned into the second and then the third, it became clear that the humans understood perfectly well. They just didn't care. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that humans were like every other species they had conquered. But humans had learned something during their long history of fighting each other. Sometimes, the only way to win is to refuse to lose. The first Kythera landing ships touched down in major human cities around the world. Queen Commander Zixka had chosen these targets carefully: New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo. If she could control the biggest cities, the human governments would have to surrender. But when her troops marched out of their ships, they found empty streets. The humans had evacuated their cities in record time. Millions of people had simply vanished underground. They had gone into subway tunnels, basement parking garages, old bomb shelters, and mine shafts. Some had even hidden in sewer systems. "Where did they all go?" asked Captain Thekmore, the commander of the New York landing force. His scouts reported the same thing from every city. The buildings were empty, but there were signs that humans had been there just hours before. Hot coffee sat on tables. Computers were still running. Cars were parked in the streets with engines still warm. Then, the shooting started. It began with a single rifle shot from a window 20 floors up. A Kythera soldier fell. His armor should have stopped the bullet, but somehow it had gone right through. More shots came from different buildings. Then explosions echoed through the streets as hidden bombs went off under Kythera vehicles. The humans weren't fighting like any army the Kythera had ever faced. There were no battle lines, no organized formations, no commanders giving orders on radio frequencies they could intercept. Instead, small groups of humans attacked from everywhere at once, then disappeared before the Kythera could fight back. Captain Thekmore tried to understand what was happening. His military training had taught him that inferior forces always retreated to defensible positions when facing superior enemies. But these humans seemed to think every position was defensible. A grocery store became a fortress when 10 humans with hunting rifles held off 50 Kithra soldiers for 3 hours. An office building turned into a death trap when humans dropped furniture and office equipment from upper floors onto Kithara troops below. Even a children's playground became a weapons depot when human civilians used the metal swings as clubs and the slides as cover. "Sir," one of Thekmor's soldiers reported, "we've secured the government building, but there's no one inside. The human leaders have disappeared." This was wrong. Human leaders were supposed to be in their government buildings, ready to negotiate surrender terms. Instead, they had evacuated along with everyone else. Some were hiding in underground bunkers. Others had fled to remote locations. All of them were still giving orders to their military forces through hidden communication networks. The Kithara had trained to fight armies, not entire populations. Every human civilian seemed to be a potential enemy. Children threw rocks and bottles at Kithara soldiers. Old people set fires that blocked important roads. Teenagers used their knowledge of computers to interfere with Kithara communications. But the worst surprise came when the humans started using their own vehicles as weapons. Cars and trucks loaded with explosives crashed into Kithara positions. Construction vehicles rammed into alien ships. Even garbage trucks became mobile fortresses when humans welded metal plates onto them and mounted guns in the back. Queen Commander Zixka watched the reports from her command ship with growing alarm. Her forces controlled the major cities, but they didn't really control anything. The humans kept attacking from tunnels, sewers, and abandoned buildings. Every time the Kithara cleared an area, more humans appeared as soon as they moved on. "This is not how invasion is supposed to work," she said to her tactical officer. "Perhaps we should request reinforcements," the officer suggested. Zixka did not want to ask for help. This was supposed to be a simple training exercise, but after a week of fighting, she had lost 3 entire hive units. That was more casualties than the hegemony had suffered in their last 10 conquests combined. The turning point came when the humans started taking Kithara equipment. At first, they just picked up weapons from fallen soldiers, but soon they were capturing entire vehicles and even small ships. Human mechanics and engineers worked around the clock to figure out how alien technology functioned. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a mechanical engineer from Detroit, led a team that had captured a Kithara scout ship. She had never seen alien technology before, but she understood machines. With help from her team, she started taking the ship apart piece by piece. "Look at this," she said to her assistant, pointing at what appeared to be the ship's engine. "It's a fusion reactor, but they're using magnetic containment fields in a way I've never seen before." "Can we copy it?" her assistant asked. "Better," Dr. Martinez said with a smile. "We can improve it." The humans had learned something important during their first week of fighting. Kithara technology was advanced, but it wasn't perfect. The aliens had focused on making their equipment reliable and easy to use. But humans were used to fixing broken machines with whatever materials they could find. Soon, human resistance fighters were using Kithara energy weapons powered by car batteries. They mounted alien guns on pickup trucks and motorcycles. They even figured out how to make Kithara armor fit human bodies by using duct tape and wire. The aliens had better technology, but humans understood improvisation. Captain Thekmor received a report that disturbed him even more than the human resistance. "Sir, we've detected human forces moving through the underground tunnel systems. They appear to be coordinating attacks across the entire city." "How is that possible?" Thekmor demanded. "We destroyed their communication systems on the first day." "They're using the underground infrastructure, sir. Old telephone cables, fiber optic lines, even the electrical grid. They've also set up relay stations in the tunnel systems. We can't reach them without sending troops underground." Thekmor did not want to send his soldiers into the human tunnel systems. The Kithara were used to fighting in open spaces where their superior weapons and armor gave them an advantage. Underground, in narrow tunnels, those advantages disappeared. But he had no choice. His orders were to pacify the human population, and he couldn't do that while they were hiding underground. The first Kithara squad that entered the New York subway system never came back out. The second squad reported heavy resistance before their communications went dead. By the time the third squad went in, the humans had turned the entire underground into a fortress. They had blocked tunnels with debris, set up firing positions at every intersection, and rigged explosives that could collapse whole sections if needed. The humans fought like they lived in those tunnels. They knew every passage, every maintenance room, every emergency exit. The Kithara soldiers, wearing heavy armor and carrying large weapons, moved slowly and clumsily in the narrow spaces. Worse, the humans had started using Kithara weapons against them. Energy blasts that should have been impossible for primitive humans to operate now came from every shadow. After 2 weeks of fighting, Queen Commander Zixka finally sent a message to Commander Vexthai. "We need reinforcements," she admitted. "These humans are not behaving according to any military doctrine we know. They refuse to surrender even when defeat is certain. They turn civilian infrastructure into military assets. They adapt our technology faster than should be possible." Vexthai read the message twice before he believed it. "A primitive species is giving the Kithara trouble?" His second officer brought him the latest casualty reports. "Sir, they've lost more soldiers in 2 weeks than we usually lose in an entire conquest campaign." For the first time in his career, Vexthai began to wonder if the hegemony had made a mistake, but it was too late to stop now. The galaxy was watching. If the hegemony failed to conquer a single primitive planet, other species might start to think the mighty galactic empire wasn't so mighty after all. "Send additional forces," he ordered, "and tell them to prepare for extended operations." Down on Earth, in a tunnel beneath Manhattan, Dr. Martinez finished installing a Kithara fusion reactor into a subway train. The train would now have enough power to punch through alien armor with its reinforced front car. "You know," she said to her assistant, "I'm starting to think these aliens picked the wrong planet to invade." Above ground, human resistance fighters prepared for the next wave of alien ships. They had learned a lot in 2 weeks. Most importantly, they had learned that the aliens could be beaten. The galaxy had taught humanity a valuable lesson about advanced technology and superior firepower. Humanity was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about what happens when you threaten someone's home. Commander Vexthai stood in the Hegemony Council chamber, trying to explain how a primitive species had held off their forces for 3 weeks. The 12 species that made up the council sat in a circle around him, their various eyes and sensory organs focused on his every word. "The humans are not fighting according to standard military doctrine," he said. "They use tactics we have never encountered." "Explain," said the crystalline representative, her voice echoing through her crystal body like wind through caves. "They do not have a unified command structure, yet they coordinate attacks across entire continents. They retreat when winning and advance when losing. They use their own civilians as soldiers and their infrastructure as weapons." The council members made sounds of confusion and disbelief. This was not how war worked. There were rules, protocols, accepted methods of combat that every civilized species followed. "Most disturbing," Vexthai continued, "they are improving our technology. In 3 weeks, they have modified our weapons and vehicles in ways our engineers didn't think possible." "That's impossible," said the Nethek representative. "They lack the scientific knowledge and industrial base." "I thought so too," Vexthai replied. "But we have recordings." The holographic display showed a human woman named Sarah Chen leading a group of humans onto a captured Kithara ship. She was a school teacher from California who had never been in the military. But when the invasion started, she had organized her neighbors into a resistance cell. The recording showed her team using blowtorches and crowbars to break into alien systems. They didn't understand the technology, but they understood how to break things and put them back together differently. "Watch what happens next," Vexthai said. The humans had figured out how to operate the ship's basic systems in just 2 hours. By the end of the first day, they had modified the ship's weapons to fire human ammunition. By the end of the week, they had turned the entire ship into a mobile headquarters for resistance operations. "This violates everything we know about technological development," the Council's science advisor said. "Species cannot simply skip centuries of research and development. The humans aren't trying to understand our technology," Vexthai explained. "They're just trying to use it. They treat our advanced systems like broken machinery that needs to be fixed." The Council decided to send the crystalline shock troops to Earth. The crystallines were veterans who had conquered 50 worlds. Their energy weapons could cut through any known armor, and their crystal bodies were nearly indestructible. General Korth Zal led the crystalline force personally. He had never lost a battle in 200 years of service. The humans would learn what real warfare looked like when they faced professional soldiers instead of inexperienced Kithara. His first target was a human stronghold in the Rocky Mountains. Intelligence reports said hundreds of humans had fortified an old mining complex with captured alien technology. It should be an easy victory for his elite troops. The crystallines landed their ships and advanced on the human position with perfect military precision. Their energy shields deflected the primitive human bullets. Their weapons carved through human-built barriers like they were made of paper. But something was wrong. The humans weren't where they were supposed to be. The mining complex appeared to be defended, but when the crystallines broke through the barriers, they found empty rooms and corridors. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "we're detecting movement underground, extensive tunnel networks that weren't on our scans." General Korth Zal knew about human tunnel systems. Every hegemony force had encountered them. But these tunnels were different. They connected to natural cave systems that went deep into the mountains. The humans had turned an entire mountain into a fortress. The first sign of real trouble came when his troops started disappearing. Crystalline soldiers were tough and smart, but they weren't used to fighting enemies they couldn't see. The humans had learned to move through their tunnel systems without making noise. They would appear, attack, and vanish before the crystallines could respond. Worse, the humans had figured out how to hurt crystalline bodies. They couldn't break the crystal directly, but they had discovered that extreme temperature changes could cause fractures. Human resistance fighters used stolen alien plasma weapons to heat sections of crystalline armor, then immediately cooled them with liquid nitrogen stolen from hospitals and laboratories. "These humans learn too fast," Korth Zal admitted to his second-in-command. "Every tactic we use, they develop a counter-tactic within days." "Perhaps we should request orbital bombardment," his officer suggested. Korth Zal considered this. Orbital bombardment would certainly destroy the human stronghold, but the hegemony had rules about damaging worlds they intended to colonize. Besides, there were now dozens of human strongholds across the planet. They couldn't destroy every mountain, city, and forest on Earth. The breakthrough moment came when Captain Sarah Chen led the first human attack on a crystalline ship. Her team had spent weeks studying captured alien technology and planning their assault. "Remember," she told her volunteers, "we're not trying to understand how it works. We just need to break it in the right places." Her team consisted of a mix of civilians and military personnel. There was a former NASA engineer, a high school chemistry teacher, a retired Marine sergeant, and a teenager who was good with computers. None of them were supposed to be able to capture an advanced alien warship. They approached the ship using modified human vehicles covered in crystalline shield generators they had reverse-engineered. When the ship's defenses fired at them, their improvised shields held just long enough for them to reach the landing bay. The boarding action that followed became legendary among human resistance fighters. Sarah's team used industrial cutting tools to breach the ship's inner defenses. They threw homemade explosives into critical systems. They even used fire extinguishers as weapons when they ran out of ammunition. Most importantly, they captured the ship intact. Within days, human engineers were crawling all over the crystalline vessel, taking it apart and putting it back together. They couldn't read the alien technical manuals, but they could see how the systems connected to each other. Dr. Martinez, who had become the unofficial leader of human technology research, made a discovery that changed everything. "Look at this," she said, showing her team a piece of the ship's navigation system. "This isn't magic. It's just engineering we haven't seen before, and most of it is unnecessarily complicated." Human engineers had always been taught to build things as simply as possible. If a machine could do a job with 10 parts, using 20 parts was wasteful and prone to failure. But alien technology seemed to use 1,000 parts to do what humans could do with 100. "They've been building the same way for so long, they've forgotten how to innovate," Dr. Martinez realized. "We can beat this." The humans began building their own versions of alien technology. They couldn't match the aliens' advanced materials, but they could create simpler, more reliable versions using human manufacturing techniques. A human-built energy weapon might not be as powerful as an alien version, but it was easier to repair and modify. A human-built shield generator might not last as long, but it could be built in a regular factory using materials found on Earth. General Korth Zal watched the humans launch their first spacecraft equipped with modified alien technology. It was crude compared to hegemony ships, but it could fly faster than light and carry weapons that could damage crystalline armor. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a message from the human ship." The message was simple. "Your turn to be visited." For the first time in galactic history, a pre-FTL species had achieved faster-than-light travel in less than a month. They had done it by stealing alien technology and rebuilding it according to human engineering principles. Commander Vexthai received the report while reviewing casualty figures from Earth. The hegemony had lost more ships and soldiers in 1 month than they had lost in the previous 10 years combined. "Sir," his second officer said, "perhaps we should consider negotiation." "The hegemony does not negotiate with primitive species," Vexthai replied automatically. But even as he said it, he wondered if the humans were still primitive. They had gone from chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel in 4 weeks. They had taken alien technology that had been developed over millennia and improved it using tools and methods the galaxy had never seen. Most troubling of all, other species were starting to pay attention. The hegemony ruled the galaxy through fear and superior technology. If word spread that humans had beaten both, the consequences could be catastrophic. "Send a message to the Council," Vexthai ordered. "Tell them we need to end this quickly before other species get ideas." On Earth, Sarah Chen stood in the command center of humanity's first space battleship. It had been built in record time using alien technology, human ingenuity, and materials salvaged from around the world. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from several alien ships." Sarah smiled. A month ago, she had been teaching high school students about the American Revolution. Now she was commanding a starship in humanity's own revolution against galactic tyranny. "Tell them we'll accept their surrender," she said, "but make it clear that surrender doesn't mean defeat. It means they get to help us build something better." The galaxy had taught humanity about advanced technology and space travel. Now humanity was going to teach the galaxy about freedom, innovation, and what happens when you underestimate someone's will to survive. Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Revenge, humanity's first deep space warship. 6 months ago, he had been designing rocket engines for NASA. Now he commanded a fleet of ships that could travel faster than light and fight alien battle cruisers on equal terms. The Revenge had started life as a cargo hauler, one of the massive ships that carried supplies between Earth and the asteroid mining stations. But human engineers had transformed it into something the galaxy had never seen before. They had mounted alien weapon systems using human industrial techniques. They had added armor plating salvaged from captured enemy ships. They had installed fusion reactors that combined alien technology with human safety systems. The result was a ship that looked like nothing in the hegemony fleet. It was ugly, improvised, and held together with welds and bolts that would have horrified alien engineers. But it worked. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting a hegemony patrol squadron 2 light hours ahead. 3 ships, standard configuration." Torres nodded. The hegemony had been sending patrols to the edge of Earth's solar system for months, testing human defenses and trying to prevent more human ships from reaching deep space. Today, that would change. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "All ships prepare for combat." Torres's fleet consisted of 12 vessels, all of them converted civilian ships. There was a mining platform that now carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. A research vessel equipped with sensors that could track enemy ships across star systems. Even a tourist liner that had been turned into a mobile command center. None of them had been designed for war, but war had come to them anyway. The humans had learned to adapt. The hegemony patrol ships detected the human fleet and immediately began broadcasting surrender demands. They still thought they were dealing with primitive aliens who would run away when faced with superior technology. They were about to learn otherwise. "Open fire," Torres commanded. The human ships attacked using tactics no military academy had ever taught. Instead of forming battle lines or following traditional fleet formations, they spread out in all directions and attacked from multiple angles at once. The mining platform used its rock-drilling lasers, now powered by alien energy cores, to punch holes in enemy armor. The research vessel launched missiles that had been built in Earth factories but guided by alien navigation systems. The tourist liner used its civilian communications equipment to jam enemy sensors while broadcasting human music at frequencies that interfered with alien computer systems. The hegemony patrol ships tried to respond with standard fleet maneuvers, but they couldn't target enemies that refused to fight in standard ways. Within minutes, 2 of the alien ships were disabled, and the 3rd was retreating at full speed. "Shall we pursue, sir?" asked the tactical officer. "No," Torres replied. "Let them report what they saw. It's time the hegemony understood what they're really facing." Back on Earth, the war had settled into a pattern that confused alien strategists. The hegemony controlled most major cities, but they couldn't control the population. Humans continued to live and work in underground complexes that grew larger and more sophisticated every day. Dr. Sarah Martinez had become the unofficial director of human technology development. Her teams worked around the clock in laboratories hidden beneath factories, schools, and even shopping malls. They were not just copying alien technology anymore. They were improving it. "The problem with hegemony tech," she explained to her latest team of volunteer engineers, "is that they've been building the same designs for thousands of years. They've forgotten how to innovate." Her current project was a new type of shield generator that used human computer processors combined with alien energy systems. The alien shields were powerful but inflexible. The human version was weaker but could adapt to different types of attacks in real time. "We can't match their raw power," Martinez continued, "but we can be smarter about how we use what we have." The breakthrough had come when her teams realized that alien technology was designed for species that thought in very different ways than humans. Alien computers were incredibly advanced, but they followed rigid programming patterns. Alien weapons were enormously powerful, but they couldn't be modified quickly in the field. Humans had always been good at taking things apart and putting them back together differently. Now they were doing it with technology that was supposed to be impossible to understand. Queen Commander Zixka watched the latest reports from Earth with growing despair. Her forces still held the major population centers, but the humans had turned every building into a potential fortress. They had connected their underground tunnel systems into a network that spanned entire continents. Most disturbing, they were building new technology faster than her intelligence officers could track it. "Ma'am," her science officer reported, "we've detected another human spacecraft launching from the hidden base in Antarctica." That was the 15th human ship this month. Each one was different, built using whatever materials and technology the humans could find. Some were fast scouts that could outrun hegemony fighters. Others were heavily armed warships that could challenge much larger alien vessels. All of them were crewed by humans who seemed to have no fear of death. "How are they building so many ships?" Zixka demanded. "They appear to be using their industrial base in ways we didn't anticipate," the science officer replied. "Car factories are building spacecraft components. Electronics manufacturers are making weapons systems. Even their food processing plants have been converted to produce armor materials." The humans had done something the hegemony had never seen before. Instead of concentrating their military production in a few heavily defended facilities, they had spread it across their entire planet. Every factory, workshop, and garage could potentially build parts for the human war effort. It made targeting their production capabilities almost impossible. Commander Vexithai stood before the Hegemony Council once again, but this time he was not alone. Representatives from 3 other alien species had joined him, all reporting the same disturbing news. "The humans have left their solar system," the Altarian ambassador announced. "Their ships have been detected in 7 different star systems. They appear to be making contact with our subject species." This was the nightmare scenario the Council had feared. The hegemony's power depended on keeping their subject species isolated and dependent. If the humans started offering alternatives, the entire galactic order could collapse. "What are they offering?" asked the Council chairman. "Technology sharing, military cooperation, and something they call independence," the ambassador replied. The word independence sent ripples of alarm through the council chamber. For millennia, the concept hadn't existed in galactic politics. Species were either rulers or subjects. The idea that a species could be neither was revolutionary. "We must stop this immediately," the chairman declared. "Prepare the Grand Fleet." The Grand Fleet was the hegemony's ultimate military force. It consisted of 500 of their most advanced warships, crewed by their best officers, and equipped with weapons that could destroy entire planets. It had never been defeated in the 2,000 years since its creation. But Admiral Torres had been preparing for this moment since the first human ship had achieved faster-than-light travel. When the Grand Fleet arrived at Earth, they found something unprecedented waiting for them. The human home system had been turned into the largest fortress in galactic history. The asteroid belt now bristled with weapons platforms built into the rocks themselves. The moons of Jupiter had been converted into naval bases where human ships could repair and rearm. Even Earth's moon had been hollowed out and filled with manufacturing facilities that produced warships around the clock. Most shocking of all, the human fleet was no longer alone. Ships from a dozen different species flew alongside human vessels. These were species that had been subjects of the hegemony for centuries, but they had declared independence after seeing what humans had accomplished. "Sir," the Grand Fleet's intelligence officer reported to Fleet Admiral Koreth, "we count over 2,000 enemy vessels. Unknown configuration, mixed technology, coordinated command structure." Fleet Admiral Koreth had been expecting to face a few dozen primitive human ships. Instead, he found himself looking at the largest military alliance in galactic history. "How is this possible?" he demanded. The answer came in a transmission from Admiral Torres himself. This is Admiral Marcus Torres of the United Earth Defense Fleet and the Free Species Alliance, the human's voice said over the communication channel. You are trespassing in sovereign space. You have 1 hour to withdraw your forces and open negotiations, or we will consider your presence an act of war. Fleet Admiral Koreth almost laughed. No one had ever threatened the Grand Fleet before, but as he studied the tactical displays, his laughter died. The human alliance had positioned their ships in ways that defied military logic. They weren't arranged in battle lines or defensive formations. Instead, they had spread throughout the solar system in what appeared to be random patterns. "Sir," his tactical officer said nervously, "I can't predict their battle plan. Their formations don't match any known military doctrine." Because they don't have military doctrine, Koreth realized. They're making it up as they go. The hour passed, and the Grand Fleet began its advance. They would teach these upstart humans what real military power looked like. But as the first hegemony ships moved into attack position, something happened that would be remembered for millennia to come. The entire solar system came alive. Hidden weapons platforms opened fire from asteroid bases. Human ships attacked from directions that should have been impossible. Allied vessels used tactics that combined the best military knowledge of a dozen different species. And at the center of it all, the UES Revenge led the charge against the Grand Fleet's flagship, broadcasting a simple message on all frequencies. "Welcome to our neighborhood. Hope you brought your own ride home." The greatest military force in galactic history was about to learn what happened when you picked a fight with someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. 1 year after first contact, the emergency session of the Hegemony Council met in a bunker deep beneath their capital world. For the first time in galactic history, they were not meeting in their grand chamber above ground because it was no longer safe. Commander Vexthai delivered his final report to the 12 species that had once ruled the galaxy without question. "The Grand Fleet has been destroyed," he announced. "Fleet Admiral Koreth surrendered his flagship after losing 60% of his force in the first day of battle. The remaining ships have either joined the human alliance or retreated to defensive positions around our core worlds." The silence that followed was deafening. The Grand Fleet had been the symbol of hegemony power for 2 millennia. Its destruction meant that the age of galactic empire was ending. "How?" asked the chairman. "How did a primitive species destroy our greatest military achievement?" "They were never primitive," Vexthai replied. "We made the mistake of judging them by their technology instead of their capabilities. While we were building bigger ships with more powerful weapons, they were learning how to fight." The battle for Earth's solar system had lasted 3 days and changed everything. The humans and their allies had not tried to match the Grand Fleet's firepower. Instead, they had used speed, coordination, and tactics that the hegemony had never encountered. Human ships had attacked like packs of wolves, targeting individual enemy vessels with overwhelming force before disappearing into the asteroid fields. Allied species had shared their best military knowledge, creating combined tactics that used the strengths of each race while covering their weaknesses. Most importantly, the humans had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Every moon, asteroid, and space station had been equipped with guns and missiles. The Grand Fleet had not been fighting a navy. They had been fighting an entire civilization that refused to surrender. But the real shock had come after the battle, when Admiral Torres had offered terms to the defeated hegemony forces. "We don't want to conquer anyone," he had announced. "We want to free everyone." The Terra Doctrine, as it came to be known, was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of demanding tribute or forcing defeated enemies to become subjects, the humans offered partnership. They shared their technology freely and asked for nothing in return except the promise that no species would be forced to serve another. Within months, the hegemony's subject species began declaring independence. The Zephyrians, who had been the backbone of the hegemony military, were the first to join the Free Species Alliance. They brought with them knowledge of hegemony weaknesses and military plans. The Altarians followed, contributing their advanced sensor technology and navigation systems to the growing alliance. The Vorthon mining guilds provided raw materials and industrial expertise. Even some of the younger Kithara hives broke away from their queens and joined the revolution. "The galaxy is changing," the chairman said to the council. "Our way of ruling through fear and superior technology no longer works when our subjects have alternatives." "What do you suggest?" asked the crystalline representative. "Negotiation," the chairman replied, speaking the word as if it tasted bitter. For the first time in galactic history, the hegemony requested diplomatic talks with their enemies. The meeting was held on a neutral space station in the border region between hegemony and alliance territory. Admiral Torres arrived aboard the UES Constitution, a new class of human starship that combined the best technology from a dozen different species. With him came representatives from every member of the Free Species Alliance, creating the largest diplomatic gathering in galactic history. Commander Vexthai led the hegemony delegation. He had requested the assignment personally, wanting to understand how a species he had dismissed as primitive had brought down an empire that had lasted for millennia. "Admiral Torres," he said as they met in the station's central conference room, "I must ask you something. When we first arrived at Earth, our intelligence indicated that your species was divided and warlike. Yet you united against us almost immediately. How?" Torres smiled. "You're right that we fight each other a lot. But there's one thing that unites humans faster than anything else." "Which is?" "Someone from outside trying to tell us what to do." The negotiations took weeks. The hegemony offered various terms. They would grant Earth independence in exchange for a promise not to interfere with other hegemony worlds. They would share some technology if humans agreed to limit their expansion. They would even allow Earth to become a client state with limited self-governance. To every offer, Admiral Torres gave the same response. "We're not interested in deals for ourselves," he said. "We want freedom for everyone." The hegemony negotiators couldn't understand this position. In galactic politics, every species looked out for their own interests first. The idea that humans would risk their own safety to free strangers was incomprehensible. But as the negotiations continued, more and more species declared independence and joined the alliance. The hegemony's territory shrank daily as their subjects realized they had a choice. The breakthrough came when Queen Commander Zixka arrived at the station with a delegation from the younger Kithara hives. "We wish to join the alliance," she announced. "Our species has served the hegemony for 800 years. We want to learn what it means to be free." This was personal betrayal for Commander Vexthai. The Kithara had been his people's closest allies. But as he looked into Zixka's compound eyes, he saw something he had never seen before. Hope. "Why?" he asked her privately after the session ended. "Because the humans showed us something we had forgotten," she replied. "That it's possible to be strong without making others weak. That cooperation is more powerful than domination." The final agreement was unlike any treaty in galactic history. The hegemony would dissolve as a political entity. Its member species would be free to choose their own path, either joining the alliance or forming independent governments. Most importantly, the use of force to subjugate other species would be forbidden throughout the galaxy. In exchange, the alliance would provide technology and assistance to help former hegemony worlds transition to independence. There would be no punishment for past actions, no demands for tribute or reparations. "This is mercy beyond what we deserve," the chairman admitted during the final session. "This isn't mercy," Admiral Torres replied. "It's enlightened self-interest. A galaxy full of free species working together is stronger and more prosperous than an empire built on fear." The signing ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, representatives from hundreds of species gathered to create something based on cooperation rather than conquest. Commander Vexthai watched as Admiral Torres signed the document that would reshape galactic civilization. The human leader had grown from a rocket engineer to the architect of a new galactic order in just over a year. "Admiral," Vexthai said as the ceremony concluded, "may I ask what you plan to do now that the war is over?" Torres looked out at the stars through the station's observation deck. "Build something better. There are still species out there that need help achieving independence. There are scientific discoveries to be made, worlds to explore, problems to solve. The galaxy is full of possibilities now that we're not spending all our energy fighting each other. And if another threat emerges? Another empire that tries to conquer free worlds?" Torres smiled, the same expression Vexthai had learned to associate with human determination. "Then we'll teach them the same lesson we taught you, that freedom isn't given, it's taken. And once taken, it's defended by any means necessary." 5 years later, Commander Vexthai served as the Zephyrian representative to the Alliance Council. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. Trade flowed freely between worlds. Scientific knowledge was shared openly. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than conquest. The former hegemony worlds had not just survived independence, they had thrived. Without the burden of supporting a massive military and bureaucracy, resources could be devoted to improving life for ordinary citizens. But the greatest change was in the children. On worlds throughout the galaxy, young members of dozens of different species played together, learned together, and dreamed of futures that would have been impossible under the old order. Vexthai often thought about the moment when everything had changed. It had not been a single battle or discovery. It had been the simple human belief that everyone deserved the chance to choose their own destiny. The galaxy had learned many lessons from humanity. They had learned about innovation, adaptation, and the power of cooperation. But most importantly, they had learned that the greatest strength was not the ability to conquer others, but the wisdom to help them become free. As he watched human and alien children playing in the park outside the Alliance headquarters, Vexthai reflected on how wrong his initial assessment had been. Humanity was not a species that could be easily conquered or controlled. They were teachers, and they had taught the galaxy that a future built on freedom was not just possible, but inevitable. The age of empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And it all started because the galaxy had made one simple mistake. They had underestimated what happens when you threaten someone's home.